What do men want?
Manifests itself in relationships, and you feel it in relationships, and they can be very powerful spiritually. And if that's what you need, that's what you should go for.
And she said, oh, I'm going to go do a sweat lodge this evening. And I begged her to take me along, and that was about 6 years ago.
Welcome to Speaking of Men. You're watching public access television from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Joining us today in the studio is Major Marc Strickland of the United States Air Force, and our topic is reconciling a father's death. Loss of a father, reconciliation of an absent father, is a wound that many men have received in our culture. We, as a group, a great number of men are beginning to try to reconcile that and deal with it. I'd like to welcome you to the program today.
Glad to be here.
You have been working on the issue of losing your father as a youngster and then later his death for a few years now. Why don't you give us some background on that, and we'll see where it takes us.
Okay, I guess it goes back to about when I was 14, 15, when my mother and father were divorced. They were divorced because of an alcoholic problem my father had, and it was about lived about a year and a half by himself. Subsequent to the divorce, after about a year and a half, he committed suicide. And as a kid, I more or less sided with my mother, and had a lot of support to try and justify my dad's having done what he did. And the years went by. I continued to grow and didn't really pay much attention to the issue, and didn't really miss my dad. I was too involved with being a teenager, too involved with being just growing up. And then when I was about 22, I had a son of my own. I'd been married and had a son of my own, and just felt a really intense need, began to understand, and felt an intense need to go back and try to understand what my dad was going through. That continued throughout I had 3 more children, and it continued for a number of years. My first wife didn't really understand and really didn't facilitate or help me, to accept that. Really didn't support me in discussions about my father. I thought I had a problem, and I felt guilty. Because I felt I had contributed somewhat to my dad's suicide. So there's a lot of dynamics involved in it. Years went by, and I'd say about a good 10 years ago, I decided that I was going to take some aggressive action, and contacted his wife, his second wife, my dad's, and decided to ask people at his work about him. Just a journey in search of my dad and who he was, and what he felt, what he thought. It's just some things that were missing in my life, and I wanted to find out more about my father. And I was able to meet with her and some of his friends, and just had some good stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I'm at today, and I'm still, in a sense, reconciling my dad's death. But
suicide is, of course, a terrible emotional impact on the entire family.
Oh, it sure is.
So you have, you not only lose your dad, that's about as great a loss as a person can get. How do you feel that the suicide impacted you guys.
Oh, it.
You have a couple of brothers and sisters.
Right. I came from a family of a younger brother and sister, and I'm the oldest, of course.
Of course.
So I don't think anybody really can explain how suicide in fact impacts a family. But the thing about the thing was so difficult for this particular situation for me was that my dad had come over. I was sick and had come over the last time I saw him, and he came into my room, and he and my mom had, again, it was still early in the divorce. I think they had been divorced for some time, a few months, and Dad wanted to make amends with his kids. He was going through some guilt, and I absolutely just wouldn't have anything to do with him. And it was really tough. In fact, my last words to my dad were very hateful words. And about 3 or 4 months later is when he passed away. And I tell you what, you can push that out. You have the support at the time. Everybody rallies around the family whenever there's a death, and a suicide even more so. But no one really knew except me and my dad what I had said, my contributions to it. That particular Christmas, my brother and sister had gone to his house. And we have pictures of my brother and sister there, but I refused to go. And a lot of it was just anger because, I was trying to support my mom at the time, and she was angry at him, so I was going to be angry too. And it is tough, death in and of itself, but suicide on top of it is extremely difficult. And if you feel like you've contributed to it in any way, it is extremely difficult.
And how old were you then?
I was about 14, 15.
So one of the things that men discuss in groups that I've been in is the fact that a lot, especially if you're an older child, that the young male takes the place of the father emotionally, and is kind of like the little man of the house,
That's right.
gives up. I have another friend whose father committed suicide. And kind of the same situation. He suddenly was responsible for his siblings, younger ones, and he lost a lot of his childhood, and he had to take on a lot of the attitudes that his mother had about his dad. Do you feel that was true?
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, and I don't think anybody really does. As an adult, I sought some professional help. And that was one of the things that came out of it. And a lot of people, especially men, will scoff at getting help, but that helped me. And one of the things in that effort was the fact that I had taken on a lot of responsibilities as a young man, a young teenager. And I don't know that I missed my childhood, but I did miss out on a lot of activities, emotional things. I missed being able to discuss things with an older man. There were some surrogates there. I had Boy Scouts and those kinds of things. But I tell you, there's nothing, Mike, that can take the place of having your own father there. And as you well know, you end up taking the road, or the road through life. You end up traveling a little bit farther. And if you have somebody there that's traveled that road, they can help you a little bit. And I've hit and miss, and haven't turned out too bad. But I think it would have been a lot easier, had my father been here and been able to help me, guide me some more. So as an adult, I'm still, like I say, I'm still in the reconciling process, and I think it's going to be a journey that that I continue throughout the rest of my life. Fortunately, I've got. My second wife is extremely supportive, extremely understanding. It's 180 degrees out from what it was before, and I'm convinced, that she's the key. She's the key to this whole thing. Lets me be me. Lets me feel what I'm feeling. And I brought some pictures of my dad from things that I found that I gathered from his wife, and I left them in a trunk for a couple of years. And when I married the second time, Nan, she took them and put them in frames and made them real nice, and we have them in our home. And Dad is now part of our family rather than something that we don't talk about. He is a part of our family. He's something that we discuss with our with his grandchildren, and we keep his memory alive in a positive way.
You know, it's very important. I think this is something that we say on Speaking of Men quite a bit. One of the things that we hope that the men's movement is able to create is a situation where men and women going through divorce are able at some point to be adult enough to remove the children involved from the emotional war and the consequential damage that results of comes out of. Robert Bly talks about, and some men familiar with the movement probably have heard this story, where there was a young man who, much like yourself, his dad had not died, but he was still alive, but he had all of the attitudes towards his father that his mother had. He did not have any attitudes of his own, and that denied him the relationship. And when he got to be about 35 or 40, which is that seems to be somewhere in that age group when men suddenly have enough life experience to realize who their fathers were and what they may have been experiencing, he suddenly realized that he had done his father an injustice, and he flew out to San Francisco and found his dad and knocked on the door, and he said, you know, I just want you to know that I no longer have the same attitudes towards you that my mother did. And he said his father cried and said, you know, now that I can die in peace. And that loneliness that so many men who have lost their families feel out there, that isolation. The court systems just deny men access to their children. Most juvenile offenders in American society are young men who are whose fathers are absent, don't know any responsible males, have never seen any responsible males, don't have any access to any responsible males. A lot of masculinity, especially for young men, is about ritual initiation and transition from adolescence into manhood. And one of the things that I feel, and I know a lot of other men feel, is that America has lost that. You know, a draft card or a driver's license is not initiation, and it does not create a crucible and an acceptance and an access to older men for information.
That's right.
You know, and that's where you get that stuff. That's where your mentorship comes from. So let's talk about, you're kind of touching on the fact that it's important to talk about this stuff.
Oh, you
bet. And
bet.
that you've been in situations where, as a man, it was not all right for you to talk about it.
That's right. And having been on both sides of the fence, I'm convinced that one of the things that would helps us to increase our masculinity is to talk about those things. That there really is nothing unmasculine, if you will, to cry or to feel. I certainly don't feel that way. I used to be that way. I used to withhold my feelings, and I was the quintessential young kid growing up. My first wife did not facilitate it.
You make her uncomfortable?
Oh, made her. Oh, yeah. And whenever we talk about the hardcore issues of why it was so difficult, without getting into specifics, she would just wouldn't talk about it, and told me that the reason we had problems in our marriage was because of my dad. She put that burden on my dad rather than us being able to keep the two separate. And like I say, I was going through some changes myself, and realizing that maybe, just maybe I contributed somewhat to my dad's death, and I needed to talk about that. But now I can tell you, I've been married now for about 5 years, and
are you in love?
Oh,
are you happy?
Oh yeah, more so. And so I'm on this. I don't know. Guys would call it a crusade. I'm carrying this banner now that I feel like, I've come to some realizations, and I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. I still have my difficulties. I still miss my dad, but I'm able to talk about him and feel good about him, and I can say I love him, and I want to carry forward the fact that my dad was a damn good guy. He had his problems, and I resent comments, that that imply that men shouldn't talk about their past. I even resent it from other men, where they shouldn't address those kinds of issues. You know, I think we should. I think there's nothing shameful to when it comes to talking about your fathers. I feel fortunate that I had a father. I feel fortunate to have pictures, even if they're old pictures of my dad. Guys like yourself who haven't had the opportunity to see their dads, you know, that's tough. And until women and men both realize that that's tough and the impact it has.
You know, one of the, you see things on television that parody the men's movement. I think Murphy Brown one time, and what was the other one? Designing Women had a couple of short things on the men's movement, and they had like these parodies of these guys sitting around with drums and paint on their face, calling themselves by funny names. Really what those are about, and something that you wanted to touch on, that you might expand on a little bit, was having a support system.
You bet.
And it's men trying to learn how to father, to spend time with each other, and to share these kinds of experiences.
That's right. That's
which
right.
up until 10 years ago you couldn't talk about. And what bothers me, I guess, is we've gotten such a bum rap for being emotionally locked up and macho and unfeeling and all that stuff.
That's
and
right.
so suddenly, you know, the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of us have begun to try to be that way, and we still get a bum rap over it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like...
You know, and I, you know, on the support system thing, I think that's key. And whether you bang a drum, whether you are an athlete, whether you go get professional help, whether you sit down and talk with your best friend, be it male or female, your wife, it is whatever it is you need. And I feel that what is really key to it is you have to go when you're ready and not be pushed.
Right.
And you have to find out what's comfortable for you. And we as men, you know, we do ourselves an injustice. I feel that society does society an injustice when we poke fun or we make fun of whatever it is that people do to cope, whether it be writing poetry, writing letters, banging a drum, crying and talking, hugging. If people don't understand it, one of the first things they want to do is ridicule it. And I resent that. I don't bang drums, but I'm not offended at other people that do. And it's just people that don't understand. You know, they perpetuate that problem.
Well, you know, what you can't talk about is what possesses you.
That's right.
It's the hidden that keeps the blinders on. And it's important to talk about this stuff, because otherwise it's locked in here.
That's right.
And it controls you. You know, it's you're afraid of it. It gives you, it has a strength over your life, and it keeps you, you know, from being free. You know, you have a little note here about keeping positive memories alive and being positive about. You want to expand on that for me a little bit?
You bet, you bet. When my father passed away, all I had were memories that people were giving to me, and that sounds maybe kind of strange, but you know, you have people rally around you, like I mentioned before, and they talked about. They really didn't talk about anything positive. We would talk about my dad in terms of he was an alcoholic. He did these horrible things. He was abusive this way, and that's really how, you know, it kind of came to an end until I had my own son. And I remember the day my son came home. I thought about that and went trying to find some pictures and stuff of my dad. And I really didn't have a whole lot. And years went by, and I got some stuff from his first wife. And as I mentioned before, my wife, current wife, took these pictures that were just in a old trunk that I had, an old suitcase, and she put them in a frame for me and gave those to me for no reason at all. Now these are old pictures of my dad when he was 17, and this is Gilbert W. Strickland. Everybody called him Gib, and he worked for the FBI, and I want people to know that my dad was a good guy, you know, and that's my banner. This is a couple when he was young. He took these when he and my mother were dating, and hairstyle's not too much different than it is today, but Dad was a good guy. He was considered a good-looking guy back in his time. And
this is Sallisaw, Oklahoma, in the 1930s.
Well, this would be Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Yeah, that's one picture, and I think before that he was in the. Here's a picture of him when he was in the Navy. He was a man's man, I guess, if you will. He was a manly man. He was a kid like anybody else.
FBI agents usually are.
Yeah. He worked. Eventually, he came out of the Navy, finished up high school, college, and went on into the FBI. Here's some later pictures of him. These are kind of hard to see, but this one on the bottom is one of my favorites because that's a picture of my dad holding me, and I got a ball cap on and a Pittsburgh.
You were once that small, huh?
Huh? Yeah. Well, it depends in certain places. But there's a picture of my mom and my dad and his mom down here in the bottom right, and his family. And one of the things that as I went through this search on my dad is I found out that everybody there in the office, the FBI office there in Oklahoma, loved my dad. They said he treated everybody the same, and he'd say it like it was. He didn't care if it was his boss. He was never a rude person. He'd talk to the secretaries the same way, the cleanup boys. And I've tried in my mind to visualize that and try to be the same way. And I've even maybe gone the other way in being too forward, too aggressive. But I've tried to inculcate in my own mind, in my own being as I grow up, some of the things I found out from the way my dad was. He worked hard. He did whatever it took to get the job done. He was an honest man. He was full of integrity. He loved the FBI. He worked hard. He got letters of commendation from J. Edgar Hoover. I've got 4, and I know there's others. I just don't have them all. He got personal letters from J. Edgar Hoover complimenting on his efforts for being responsible for capturing 10 most wanted guys and bank robbers. And to me, my dad was he's a real world Elliot Ness, and he's a hero. And he had his faults. I don't want to idealize him for the armchair psychologist out there, but my dad was a good guy, and he had his good points. And so when we talk about positive things, I want to bring up those positive things. I want people to know that you've got to look for them. It takes a little effort sometimes, but we've got them.
You might want to talk to us a little bit. You have a note here: give yourself time, read, study, talk, pray, meditate. What we're talking about is the quest or the journey here, and trying to have your own memories of what happened, not just what everybody told you, and have your own attitude. You want to talk about some of the things you've done, maybe some?
Yeah, I write poems, and it depends. I don't do just one thing. I do whatever feels good to me, whatever gives me release, whatever makes me feel. I talk. Today I might talk. Tomorrow I might write some poems. I write a lot of poems about my feelings. I'm not a very good artist, so I elect not to do that. But I do a lot of walking, a lot of camping, a lot of meditating, a lot of talking with my wife, who's my best friend. And for me, those are the things that I do to help continue this healing process. And I would encourage any man to do whatever it takes. If you feel like crying, find somebody you're comfortable with. I think that's the key, Mike, is to, if guys are out there and they've got this stuff pent up, find somebody they can talk it over with. That's really important. If you're a drum beater, then beat the drum as best you can. And we, those of us who don't have those kinds of difficulties, we need to be human enough and realize that. I said this to you just before the show opened up. If we'd all confess our sins to one another, we'd laugh at the lack of apparent originality, and I really believe that. I should not be judging you, and just listen to you if you got some problems, and male or female,
right,
adult or child, and we need to facilitate a lot more, make it easy for people to be who they really are.
Well, there's a lot of men probably watching this program, and a lot of youngsters watching this program whose either probably their father or maybe their mother is absent.
You bet.
And I think that having been in that situation myself on both ends of it, there's a pain in that,
You bet.
and there's a real wounding and a hurting that comes out of it, and it's the attempt that we make to heal that makes this a stronger society. It's not just being, life is the gift. Life happens to all of us, and I think it's the attempt to, not just for men, but for women as well, for all of us in this country to try and be a people and to heal those wounds that we've received. I mean, this is one of the more common ones in modern society, the absent parent, but there are a lot of things, and they say that out of this wound that we have is going to be our gift, and it's to the world that we are in, and never giving up. You lose a father, you certainly never give up on your own children, because you realize what that absence means. You realize what it means to walk away from your own flesh and blood, and so you were saying that you're kind of in the same situation again now. Huh?
Yeah. As I mentioned before, I was married, and it just didn't work out. And a lot of it was centered around the fact that my first wife was not my friend, and we couldn't talk about some of these more delicate issues. And we parted ways, and she now makes it extremely difficult for me to see my 4 children. She's got levied these requirements that they all have to travel together, and I have an older son. First of all, I have a son who's 15, and then three younger girls. And the girls tend to side with their mother, and they've aligned with her, and my son hasn't really aligned with anybody, but he really wants to come and visit and see. And he's on a quest now at 15, asking some of the same questions that I was asking, and she's not making it easy for him.
Well, one of the most common forms of emotional abuse against males by women is denial or interference with visiting and custody. And the courts are beginning to look at that, but not nearly enough. I know a lot of men who are raving lunatics over the fact that they are being denied access to their children on a regular basis, and they are paying child support, and they are trying to be reasonable, and they're not deadbeat dads, and the real problem is that most people don't want to accept what it is doing to the child. Never mind the father, but what it is doing to the child. Well, we're down to about the last 30 seconds here. I'd like to thank you a whole bunch for coming on the program, spending some time with us, and maybe we can get you to come back again sometime and talk about it. It's a real thing. It's an honest-to-God real thing that's happening in America today, and it causes problems, and trying to resolve it is real important. Well, it's Mike Rivas here, and this is Speaking of Men. This is our guest, Marc Strickland. We've been talking about the father wound. Stand if you can, boys. Run if you have to. But whatever you do, don't you quit. Bye-bye.